Vishamano Yemang Nitya Yukta Upasate Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te me yukta tamamataha Te me yukta tamamataha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Vishamano Yemang Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te me yukta tamamataha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Vishamano Yemang Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te me yukta tamamataha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Vishamano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Te me yukta tamamataha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Vishamano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate Te me yukta tamamataha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Maya Vishamano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Shri Bhagavanu Vacha The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Mayi upon me, Avesha fixing, Manaha the mind, Ye those who, Mam me, Nitya always, Yuktaha engaged, Upasate worshipped, Shraddhaya with faith, Paraya transcendental, Upetaha endowed, Te they, Me by me, Yukta Tamaha most perfect in yoga, Mataha are considered. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith, are considered by me to be most perfect. Responsively, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the market to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Ganim Yat Kripa Taraham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvaram. Hare Krishna. So, in this first verse, we see that, first verse of this chapter, entitled Devotional Service, we see that Krishna is being asked a question by Arjuna. And he wants to know what's the best, those who engage in devotional service or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest. And in this verse, Krishna is giving the definitive answer, that those who are having their minds fixed on my personal form, which is transcendental, and who are engaged in worshiping me with great faith, are considered by me to be most perfect. So, Arjuna wants to clarify his position. There's always this tussle between the impersonal form of the Lord and the personal form of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada went to the world, Western world, to clear up this sunyavadi, right? This conception of voidism and nirvishesh, impersonalism. And one may think, well, that's just two philosophical concepts that's in India. Impersonalism, voidism. Voidism, sunyavadi, means Buddhism. And nirvishesh, impersonalism, means Shankaracharya. But no. Then why did he need to go to the Western world to clear up that? Right? Because in every religion, it's filled with impersonalism and voidism. God is not a person. Actually, in many religions of the world, they don't have any clear idea about God. They know that God is great, God is everywhere, some basic concepts about God. That they may know. But who is God? Right? What he likes, what he dislikes. Is God a person? That they have no idea. So, Srila Prabhupada coming to the Western world is to clear that up, to give a clear idea. What is the actual position of God? So from Srimad Bhagavatam we learn that God has his three aspects. Brahmati, Paramatmati, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate. Right? He has his impersonal aspect, definitely. We don't say no. He has his localized aspect as the Paramatma, residing in everyone's heart and every atom. Yes. But he also has his personal aspect. And Srila Prabhupada many times, to give us an understanding of these three aspects, talks about studying the sun. So the sun globe is situated in the sky, high above the earth. But when we study the sun, the first thing we see about the sun is that its energy is spread everywhere by its light, the sunlight. Right? So that's compared to the Brahman aspect of the Lord. He's spread everywhere by his energies. We even say when the sunlight comes in the room, we say, oh, there's no sun in the room, or there's lots of sun in this room. But still, we don't think, when we say the sun is in the room, we don't say that the sun globe is in the room, but the sun's energy is in the room. So the Lord, yes, he's situated everywhere because his energies are situated everywhere. But then if you go to the sun globe, you'll see that the planet is there and made up of a fire, right? And this is compared to the Paramatma realization. But then there's also a personality controlling the sun god, Surya. And that sun god is compared to the personal aspect of God. So the question by Arjuna is, which should we meditate on? And Krishna gives the answer here, saying that those persons who are fixed in devotional service, who are meditating on my personal form with faith and who are always engaged in service, they are considered by me to be yukta tamaha, means most perfect in yoga. Generally, people think of yoga nowadays as physical exercises that you perform to keep your health. Right? There's some famous sannyasis that teach yoga, how to do kalpabhati and anuloma niloma and udarabandh, right? And when he's teaching the people how to do these various pranayama exercises, he's saying you'll be free from high blood pressure, you'll be free from diabetes, you'll be able to control your weight, you'll be able to increase your longevity, you'll be able to live a long time. So people become attracted by that. Right? And this one particular person, I won't mention names, but before he became really famous, he used to come to our temple in Juhu to live in the guest house whenever he had a pandal program. So he was sitting in the lobby one day. He doesn't speak English so well, so I spoke to him in Hindi. And I said, you know, you're teaching people pranayam, but what about the Harinam? What about the holy name? And he said, no, I teach meditation. I teach dhyan. I said, yes, but the holy name. And he just looked at me and he kept quiet. Because actually, what he's teaching is the Patanjali yoga system. And the Patanjali yoga system, it's not just about controlling your diabetes and longevity. This is not the goal. The goal of the Eightfold Mystic Yoga system is to realize the Paramatma that's within the heart. Right? And he knows that. But he's actually not able to get people to that platform. You know, the best he can do is offer them freedom from diabetes or high blood pressure, or, But that way he's cheating them, actually. Right? He's not telling them that you may perform all this, but you won't really reach the goal. Right? Because in this Kali Yuga, these systems are not possible. Right? People don't have the determination to follow it through. Right? And whatever process one's following, even the process of bhakti yoga, you may work very hard at it, but for its fructification, its completion, you need the mercy of the Lord. Without the mercy of Krishna, how will we possibly overcome Krishna's material energy? And Srila Prabhupada describes, bhakti yoga means declaring war on the material energy. But who are we? Conditioned souls, tightly tied up by the ropes of the gunas, the threefold modes of nature, passion, ignorance, and goodness. Who are we to declare war on the material energy? Maya is so much powerful. Durga, right? So how is it possible? So for the completion of any type of yoga, one requires the mercy of the Lord. Right? Performing sadhana bhakti can bring us closer towards the goal, but ultimately we need the Lord's mercy in order to obtain the this yoga yuktamaha, this perfection of yoga. So the mercy of the Lord is an absolute requirement, and in this Kali Yuga, one can get the mercy of the Lord, right? Not by Patanjali's Eightfold Mystic Yoga system, not by meditation, not by performing Agnihotras, right? But by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. Chanting the holy name of the Lord can attract the mercy of the Lord. And that's what's required in order for us to become insulated from the contaminations of the age of Kali. So, Srila Prabhupada describes the basic process of becoming purified or performing devotional service. He talks about it here that a devotee, a pure devotee, is constantly engaged. Right? He's always engaged in some activity in relation to Krishna. He doesn't waste time. Prabhupada talks about the value of time. A devotee values time. And just to give us an idea, Srila Prabhupada explains that, now it's 5 minutes to 6. And then soon it'll be 6 o'clock. So if we wanted to go back to 5 minutes to 6, even if you're ready to pay $1 million or 1 crore of rupees, you can never get it, that 5 minutes that's gone. So Prabhupada tries to help us understand what is the value of our time. And Prahlad Maharaj, he describes in his instructions to the sons of the demons that, if you look at your life, people, they have a 24-hour span. So what do they do in that 24 hours? The most materialists, they sleep about 8 hours a day. But some people sleep 10, but at least 8 hours. So in a 24-hour period, 1/3 is gone in sleep. So after, if let's say you live 70 years, third of your life is gone sleeping. And then Prahlad describes how, so many years is lost in childhood. What do we do in childhood? We play. What do we play? Cricket, football, so many different other things. Children waste their time in playing it. Right? And then, when they get a little older, education. Sitting in the classroom, learning so many things that you can't wait to just get outside and forget about. Right? Right? I remember sitting in the school and looking out the window thinking there's got to be something out there better than this. So, education. And then, after one's educated, enter into family life, and then earning money, right? And they say in Hindi, sabse badi rupya, earning money, raising a family. So in this way, and we think basically, okay, I'll have some time when my family's, my children are married off, I'll be free. In America, they say the nest is empty, right? And then I'll be free. But what happens? Sure, your kids get married, and then they have kids, and the next thing you know, they're knocking on your door. Mom, Dad, can you babysit the kids? We just want to go over here, right? So that's why it's extended on and on, and there's no end to it. No end to it. So therefore, how much time do we have to actually execute the real goal of life, which is to become Krishna conscious? And that's what Prabhupada's talking here. So therefore, he's saying that we should work in such a way that whatever we're doing it for Krishna. Even if it is something like cooking. No one can survive without eating. But if we cook for the pleasure of Krishna, we fulfill that bodily requirement by making nice preparations for the pleasure of Krishna. That becomes bhakti yoga. It becomes the highest form of yoga. Why? Because you're doing it for Krishna. And even if it's that your wife makes you do the dishes, you do them for Krishna, right? They're Krishna's dishes, and you do them for Krishna. You do them for the pleasure of Krishna. And that becomes yoga. It becomes the highest form of yoga. Why? Because by that activity, one is meditating on Krishna. And once on a morning walk, a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, if we're fixing the carburetor on the car, how do we think of Krishna and at the same time think of the work that we're expected to do? And Srila Prabhupada said, if you're doing it, actually doing it for Krishna, you'll think of Krishna. He said, just like the man, he goes to the factory, right? And he's working in the factory. But he's actually working for his family, to provide for his family. So all day long, although he's in the factory, still he's thinking of this family who he's doing this work for, right? So Prabhupada said that if you're actually doing it for Krishna, then you will think of Krishna. And so many things, shopping for Krishna, cleaning the temple for Krishna. But the key is to do it for Krishna. The conditioned state is this concept of I and mine. I am something. I am PhD. I am engineer. I am this. I am that. And what my country, my family, my society, right? Mera gaon wala. This all are these two concepts, I and mine, are what lock up the consciousness of the conditioned soul to not progress in spiritual life. So devotional service means to get rid of these two concepts in the material sense. They're there. You'll always have I and you'll always have mine. But what will that I be? The I will of some material thing, I'm an American, I'm Indian, I'm Russian, will be replaced with Jiver Svarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. I am the servant of Krishna. I'm meant to please Krishna. I want to do something to please Krishna. And what is mine replaced? Where is there any place for mind concept? right? It says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nir Mama, nothing is mine. Right? But yes, mine is still there. What? Krishna is mine. I have my duty mine is the duty to serve Krishna. So that conditioned concept of owning so many things, thinking that I'm going to get pleasure by purchasing the latest electronic equipment, that will bring me happiness. They've done a study actually, and they found that people become much more happy not by owning things. There's some happiness in owning things, they've researched. Like you buy a new MP3 player and you get a certain amount of happiness by that. But because you relate with that object on a regular basis, your attachment to it wanes, and pretty soon you certainly don't get the same kick out of it as the day you bought it, and you may not even be interested in it. And that's how they sell so many other latest electronic gadgets. Right? But what they've found is that people who do things of experiences, they go on a trip in the wilderness, and it may be as simple just taking a walk in the wild. They benefit much more from that kind of an experience, right? So that Krishna consciousness is all about that. It's an experience. It's about establishing a relationship with the Supreme by rendering devotional service. So that's a much more lasting thing. In the beginning of devotional service, and that's what this full chapter is about, devotional service, we derive our happiness from the service itself, right? And whatever that may be, trying to decorate the deities very nicely, or making a nice garland with a nice pattern to it, and it's being offered to the Lord. Just that activity itself is pleasing. But later, as the devotee progresses and his consciousness becomes purified, he derives his happiness actually with the relationship that he develops with the Lord and the Lord's devotees. So devotional service is much higher than the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. Right? Because and for a devotee, the being in the Brahman or the impersonal conception is just like being in hell. It's a hellish thing. You can't even conceive of it, because there's no interaction with the Lord. Huh? If you merge with the Lord, there's no variety. You become one with the Lord. And if there's no variety, how can you differentiate things? Like what's good for the Lord or what's not good for the Lord. It's like being in a black, dark room and having a black cat in there, right? You don't even know the black cat's in the room because you can't differentiate the color. There's no variety. So in the Brahman, it's all one. You become one with the Lord by identification with the spiritual and having no variety. Right? But for the devotee, this is extremely unpleasant, because the devotee, first of all, wants to differentiate between the Lord and himself. The Lord is my master, right? The Lord is my friend. The Lord is my child, right? Like Mother Yashoda, Ananda Maharaj, right? Or the Lord is my lover. Right? So those kinds of varieties are not possible in the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. So therefore, it's shunned. The devotees of the Lord are not interested in it at all. And those persons who are in the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, if they're actually devotees, then as soon as they get an opportunity, then they come to the higher level of the personal conception of the Lord. And the example of that is the four Kumars. They came to the Vaikuntha to get in. But they were lodged in this impersonal conception. So Jai Vijay said, hey, you can't come in here. And they said, why not? And there was a commotion on the front gate. Just like here, we have sometimes some problem on the front gate. You know, if it's a real big problem, then Panch Goda Prabhu has to come down and trying to solve the problem there. Why are the chokidars not letting somebody in? Well, that happened once in Vaikuntha with the 4 Kumars. And Lord Vishnu had to come down on the front gate. What's the problem here? As soon as the Lord came, the aroma from the tulsis on his feet entered into the nostrils of the 4 Kumars. And just by that interaction with the Lord's lotus feet, they became devotees. They went from the impersonal conception right straight to the personal conception. And they were fully immersed in ecstasy, interacting with the Lord as a devotee. So this is possible. The examples of devotees coming to the personal conception of the Absolute Truth very quickly. But generally speaking, we know or understand that it's a gradual process, that basically everyone is an impersonalist. We're ignoring Krishna all the time. We're expert at impersonalism. He's the closest one to us. Just like if you move into a neighborhood and the people next door live there, they're called your neighbors, right? So you try to keep friends with the neighbors, right? You bring them some cookies or you make friends with them somehow or another, right? But who's our closest neighbor? It's Krishna. He's within our heart. He's the Supreme Lord, right? He lives in the same apartment with us, but we don't pay him any attention. Can you imagine if somebody lived in an apartment with you? Maybe it's like that with your wife, I don't know. Maybe. But you never talk to them, you never pay them any attention, right? After a while, they're going to get a little disturbed with you, right? But that's what we do with Krishna constantly, right? We just ignore him. We pay a lot more attention to our minds. We pay a lot more attention to our bodies, right? But we're part of Krishna. We're only temporarily connected to our body. We're only temporarily connected to our contaminated mind, but we're permanently connected to Krishna. But yet, we have very little time to pay him any attention. So devotional service means to rectify that. Chanting of the holy name, Cheto Dharpana Marjanam, is meant to purify our contaminated consciousness so that we again begin to focus on Krishna, that we begin to realize our best friend, our closest neighbor, right, is there always to guide us and help us. So this is what Krishna is explaining by this verse, and Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on that devotional service is much more important than the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth. Impersonalism is rampant, but somehow or another, some religions feel that it's their goal to stamp out personalism, right? It always comes up. Impersonalism always comes up. It starts out personal and then it becomes impersonal. Just like the Catholic Church. I was raised as a Catholic. So in the Catholic Church you'll find statues, you'll find pictures of Mary and Jesus and Joseph and John and the apostles, and it's kind of personal. Statues in the church, right? The older churches have even more statues, right? But then came the Protestant Reformation. And it was probably a pretty good thing, the Protestant Reformation, in the sense that the priest got carried away with building these churches. And they told the rich people in their parish that if you give this much money, you can become free from your sins. It was called, purchasing your dispensation. And that way you would go to heaven. So what Martin Luther said, well, wait a minute, you can't get to heaven just by paying money, right? So what his point was it's not by works alone, but you actually have to have faith in God. You have to have faith in Jesus, which sounds pretty reasonable, right? But the Protestants and the Catholics fought wars for over 1,000 years over this principle, right? And the Protestants turned out to be much more impersonal. No more statues, no more pictures. The only thing that's in the Protestant church is the cross, right? And then, of course, we have the Islam religion. They're fanatically impersonal. You can't even have if you draw a picture of the Prophet or a picture of Allah, that's it, you lost your head. And, they did a lot of damage to the temples, etc., because they were so much impersonal. So it's a very, a courageous thing that Srila Prabhupada did, was to establish in these other worlds that were so far off from personalism, the personal conception of the absolute truth. God is a person, and you can relate to God as a person, and you can serve God. And it's so unique what Srila Prabhupada did and the effort that he made. And it's even more unique that it took hold, right? This Krishna consciousness began to spread, and we're all sitting here listening to the philosophy of Lord Krishna, the personal God, Krishna, the blue boy that plays a flute, right? It just seems so wonderful. But the reason why it took hold is because of Srila Prabhupada's intense desire to please Krishna. He had such a desire to please Krishna by helping people become devotees of Krishna, that Krishna, as the Lord of everyone's heart, enlightened people to become devotees. I had no interaction with devotees. I got some Back to Godhead magazines, and I met the devotees at a rock festival that I attended. And somehow, out of nowhere, I got the inspiration, I would like to chant like that on the streets. That looks fun, right? So where did that idea come from, right? Run around on the streets with your bed sheets on and some clay on your forehead. I mean, when I was in high school, we all had to have the same kind of shoes, and you had to have a penny in your penny loafer, otherwise you weren't cool, and you had to use all the same kind of hair cream. We were so rigid in our caste system of what we thought was cool. But we broke out of all of that and wound up on the streets with our bed sheets and clay on our forehead. How could that have happened if it wasn't the inspiration of Krishna to satisfy his pure devotee? Right? So that's the mercy of Krishna, definitely, and we should recognize that, right? So that we can go all the way, based on that inspiration and mercy of Krishna, to come to the highest stage of always being fixed in samadhi. And samadhi is always thinking of Krishna, doing whatever you're doing for the pleasure of Krishna. Whatever talent you have, do it for Krishna. Whatever ability you have, do it for Krishna. And this is samadhi, right? It's not a matter of sitting down and cross-legged and meditating on the tip of your nose. You can't do that for very long anyway. But it is a matter of practically being engaged in Krishna's service. And like I mentioned in the Pandal, when we came to India, there was a great stress that if you come to the Holy Dham, if you really want the benefit of the Dham, you need to be engaged in Krishna's service in whatever way that you can. So devotees were very anxious to have some service, either cut sabjis or distribute prasadam, somehow or another be engaged in Krishna's service. And in that way, get the full benefit of being in the Holy Dham. And practically speaking, that's the way to get the full benefit of devotional service. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drida brataha. Satatam, always doing kirtan, doing something for Krishna, in remembrance of Krishna. And that's the way you can please Krishna. That's when you can actually come to the highest perfection of yoga. What's described here is yukta tamaha mataha. Hare Krishna. So if there are any questions, we can try to answer them. Or comments? Corrections? Yes?
You said that four Kumaras,
Yeah.
they came to meet Vishnu.
Yeah, they came to Vaikuntha.
Hare Krishna. Four Kumaras, when they came to meet Lord Vishnu, and they became devotees after smelling Tulsi ji from Lord's feet.
Yeah.
So who did they come to meet? Were they in person before? And if they
Yes,
were in person,
they were in Brahmandi. They were in the bliss of being connected to the Brahman. Brahmanandis. You know another one who was a Brahmanandi? And he also became elevated to the platform of a devotee? Who? Yes, Sukadev. He was in his mother's womb. You know how long he was there? 16 years. And his father got a little worried. Huh? He called Krishna. What are we going to do here? He's not coming out. And he thought, well, it's all one. Inside the womb, outside the womb, it's all the same. It's energy, it's light, it's Brahman. But why should I come out? So then, Krishna came to Vyasadev's house and began to discuss with Srila Vyasadeva about the glories of Krishna consciousness. And hearing that, Shukadeva became transformed from being lodged in Brahman to wanting the devotional service of the Lord. So he came out. It's another example. See, the genuine Brahmanandas, the persons that are situated in Brahman, when they get the opportunity to come in contact with the Lord, they do that. They become devotees. Right? But the others, they are offensive because they're always talking against the form of the Lord. They're not real Brahmanandis. They're just posing to be self-realized or on a high level. But they can't maintain it. So they come down again to materialistic activities, Prabhupada explains, like, social welfare activities. So, sure, the four Kumars, they were coming to Vaikuntha, but they got much more than they bargained for because they came in contact with Lord Vishnu's lotus feet.
But they came to meet the Lord. If they were in person, why did they come?
Well, can't really say why they come, but like I said, they're devotees. They're devotees. They're just like you're on a certain level, right? Aren't you? A certain level of Krishna consciousness. I can't judge which level, but you're on a certain level. But you're thinking of coming to the next level, right? To increase your relationship with Krishna in a more personal way, right? So the Brahmanandis are like that. They have a relationship with the Lord, but it's impersonal. And they want to expand it. So they came looking for that expansion. And they got it. Just like if you want to look for expanding your devotional service, increasing your relationship with Krishna, you can get it. They just got it probably a lot quicker than we're going to get it, that's all. And don't expect to get it that quick either. They're like exceptions, you know. These stories are exceptional. Right? We're slow and steady. Slow and steady wins the race. Continuously, repeatedly performing your service, trying to develop more attachment, try to develop more realization of who you're doing it for, the person you're doing it for as a person, and you have this relationship. Gradually, we'll come to the same stage.
Small thing, I just was reading this section only.
Okay?
And it's mentioned that they have heard about the form of Lord Vishnu from Lord Brahma.
There you
And
go.
now they were seeing the same form of Lord Vishnu. So it's actually mentioned in the Bible.
There you go. Their daddy told them. Yes?
So 2 verses ago, Arjuna was just told by Krishna in 1155, that last verse of that universal form chapter. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my devotional service, free from contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me and makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. And then Prabhupada says later, it says, anyone who wants to have intimate contact with the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, must take this formula. And therefore this verse is considered to be the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So then the next verse, Arjuna asks him the question, so is it more important to connect with the personal form or the impersonal form? Have we been, has he been listening? Have we been listening?
He just wants to make double sure.
Double sure. So,
Just wants to nail it down because that's what he's doing. He's surrendering to a person. He's surrendering to Krishna. And he just wants to make sure he's got it right. Even though in many instances, Krishna talks in the 2nd chapter, you're a spiritual spark, I'm a spiritual spark. He talks about, when you can come to me if you worship me, right? In many verses he introduced Arjuna to the personal feature and the personal aspect. But of course, Arjuna is speaking on our behalf, knowing how the conditioned soul has this impersonal tendency. So on our behalf, he doubly asked, right, just so that Krishna can repeat it again, and we can hear it again. We learn a thing Prabhupada said by repetition. So how much important this point is, if Krishna's, by his arrangement through Arjuna's questions, hammering it down, so that we know that God is a person, and our success is to develop that relationship with him.
One devotee, actually, I was teaching to, he has, from his childhood, he has been hearing that God is impersonal. So that sanskar within his consciousness is very strong. So he was asking me how we can get rid of that sanskar, because he has been hearing that Krishna as a person. So how to help
Mayavadi Bhashya Sarvanash, right?
How to help
If you
him
hear
then?
that philosophy again and again, it's very dangerous, And that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, if I take birth as an insect, let it be in the house of devotees. And I'm not interested to have a birth as long as Brahma, if it's not amongst devotees. So that's, the devotee's desire to be, have association with devotees and hear about the personal aspect of God. At least in the West, they don't know who God is, but they don't go around thinking that I'm God. They know there's a God, he's up there in heaven. They don't know much about him. They They see pictures of him as an old man with a beard, you know. They don't know much about him. But they don't have that. At least they don't think I'm God. Aham Brahmasmi. Om Tat Sat. In India, you get that a lot, you know. You're God, I'm God, everybody's God. You know, we just got to do meditation and realize it, right? So it's even more dangerous sometimes to be born in these impersonal families. And impersonalism is everywhere. So how important it is for us to contact these people and start them towards the path of personalism by getting them to chant Hare Krishna, take a book with the real understanding of Bhagavad Gita, or some prasadam. That begins their journey away from, like the Kumars, immediately got it. But by these little acts of devotion, they will get it. Just like the Kumars got it. But it may take a little time. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila